Welcome back. You're still watching Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. I'm now joined by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs and Deputy Principal Spokesperson of the Tinubu-Shettima Presidential Campaign Council, Ajuri Ngelale. Thank you very much for joining us again on Politics Tonight.
Good evening to you, my sister, and good evening to our viewers. And it's always a privilege to be with you. Thank you for having me.
It's 2 days to the conduct of the presidential and National Assembly elections. How will you describe the race so far?
It is going as we have expected. We are pleased that we have been able to fully implement plans laid out several months ago with respect to how we would conduct the presidential campaign of His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu and that of the All Progressives Congress. You would have taken note by now that we have seen an unprecedented rate of interaction between a presidential candidate of any party with various segments of the Nigerian public. Our candidate, His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, has been to all 36 states of the Federation, of course, including the Federal Capital Territory. In addition to that, he has gone to various segments of the population, meeting directly with farmers, in town hall meetings, with the Federation of Construction Industry, with many other stakeholders, the banking industry, etc., to really get a pulse of what are those areas in which the shoe has been pinching their feet, and how he can best meet the needs of the private sector in this country. So in addition to all of that, I personally have been able to have the privilege of going to all 36 states of the Federation via the radio to conduct radio town hall meetings with citizens across all of our states, really taking their questions directly on the issues concerning them. So we have never seen a presidential campaign run with the way this campaign has been run, and certainly we've never seen the implementation of a campaign program effectively implemented like the one we have just witnessed from His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. So coming to the state of the race, in view of what we have been able to do, in view of the case we have been able to make, which continues tonight, we are very confident that Nigerians have no doubt about who has the credibility of a developmental track record to deliver on the promises that they are now making with respect to the presidential term 2023 to 2027. And that, of course, is the candidate of the All Progressives Congress, His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. And this is why, if you listen carefully to the other candidates of the other political parties in the country, what you hear more than any kind of campaign pledge or any kind of record of achievement from their past record in past time in governance, they're all talking about the front runner. They're all talking about His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu because they know that he is the focus of this race, and he is the front runner in this race, and he is the one that Nigerians are trusting moving forward. And we're really looking forward to seeing that trust manifest itself in an overwhelming landslide victory come Saturday.
Absolutely. Now, the ABC concluded its campaign for the presidential election with a massive grand finale in Lagos on Tuesday. How satisfied are you about the impact of your campaigns on the electorate?
What we measure the success of our campaign against is the kind of scenario we're seeing in the country today with the challenges that have come up in recent weeks and months, with respect to, of course, the fuel crisis, with respect to, of course, the failed implementation of the Naira redesign policy and the impact that that has had on most Nigerian households. Whether you're rich, whether you're middle class, whether you're poor, everybody has been affected by that. And even in view of that, Nigerians have recognized that it has been only one presidential candidate that from the beginning has stood with them in spite of these challenges. You know, before the campaign started, people asked the question, why did you label your campaign Renewed Hope? Why renew hope? if you have done well as a political party, if you have done well as the All Progressives Congress. And we explained to our people very clearly that renewing hope was really against the backdrop of a situation in which the global economy had not yet fully recovered from the effects of COVID-19, a situation in which you have rising interest rates around the world, rising inflation rates around the world, really exacerbated further by the energy crisis that has now come as a result of the Russo-Ukrainian conflict. That this is why we labeled our campaign Renewed Hope. And then we now said, look, we had no idea that just a few months later that the totally botched implementation of the Naira redesign policy would bring about a whole new set of hardships, man-made hardships that at worst you will say is orchestrated malevolence on the part of a toxic tonic of some bureaucrats and some unelected political actors, and at best the incompetence of officials that were entrusted to deliver on what ordinarily would have been a very laudable policy for the country. So in view of all of this, Renewed Hope has taken on a new meaning, and Nigerians recognize that, look, when His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu came out very aggressively, very boldly, and very fearlessly, in spite of whatever anybody was going to say, he came out and he said, look, this is what is going on. And at the time that he said so, people were quite shocked that, wow, you know, what kind of a claim are we now hearing? But then they have now seen the aftermath. They have now seen the twists and turns that have gone on since then, which has shown them that this was indeed the only presidential candidate that stood with them with humane consideration for their suffering, while others who pretended to be humanists, who pretended to be populists, were those who were saying, no, let the suffering continue. The deadline should stay firm. There should be, essentially no change. Whether people eat or not is their business. This is what these quote-unquote populists were saying. Nigerians know who stood with them then. Nigerians know who stands with them now. And Nigerians know who will stand with them when he is overwhelmingly elected the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria come Saturday.
So, having gone round the 36 states of the Federation for the campaign, how will you rate acceptability of your presidential candidate by Nigerians?
Well, I think pictures are worth a million words. When you see the kind of response that we have been able to garner, particularly His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu has been able to garner across all 36 states of the Federation, if you compare, I mean, these are, and some of these things are even empirical. If you just look at the drone pictures, for example, across the various states of when His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu and His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari and the All Progressives Congress campaign train came to town, what the numbers were like in these various locations, then you will now go to those same states when the other candidates went there with the same drone pictures, and you will find that not only were the seats not full, but even the ground, the middle field level that ordinarily should be full by any serious political organization could not be filled by these various political gladiators. So what I'm saying in effect is that the proof is in the pudding. Nigerians have seen the reception. In fact, it was at the grand finale in Lagos when we had to make announcements in the public that, look, let us open the gates because there is such an overflow, such a flood of humanity, of human support for our candidate, that we had to now go and struggle to open the gate so that those flooding the external environs of the stadium in Lagos could come in and be a part of the event that so many of them were so excited to be a part of. This is the kind of response that we have seen across this country, whether it's in Borno, whether it's in places like Uyo, whether it's in places like Anambra. I mean, you just name the state and you will know that we outperformed any other political party when it comes to enthusiasm, when it comes to attendance. And then, of course, we recognize that aside from all of this, this is not a personality contest. The interest of Nigerians in this election is about who can do what It's about the can do what. It's not necessarily about the personality of the who. Those days are gone in Nigerian politics where everything was just personality, personality. Nigerians have wised up. They look at you and they say, okay, you have come to us. You're telling us what it is you're going to do. We are looking at your track record to see if you have a record of performance that can actually stand as a foundation of credibility to assure us that these promises you're making about the future, that you will deliver them. This is where we are now. So what we have said very clearly,
Mr. Ngelale, we have a lot to discuss, but of course we need to take a commercial break at this point. But the conversation will return when we come back. Please stay with us. Come back to politics tonight, and I still have with me Ajuri Ngelale. Is the senior special assistant to the president on public affairs and deputy principal spokesperson of the Tinubu-Shettima Presidential Campaign Council. All right, Mr. Ngelale, before we move on, let me allow you finish your line of thought. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. So I think just rounding up in terms of what the response of Nigerians ultimately will be on Saturday. I think it's also pertinent to take into account the electoral map and how it has shifted since 2019. You would recall that in 2019, we had more or less a very similar map to what we had in 2015, where, for just as an example, the Southeastern geopolitical zone voted massively for a party other than the All Progressives Congress. What has happened since then? For example, you would have seen the final construction and completion of massive infrastructural and, in fact, unprecedented, really, infrastructural interventions by the administration, the APC-led administration of President Muhammadu Buhari in that zone, with the second Niger Bridge, the upcoming completion of the Akano-Ibiam International Airport Terminal, Enugu-Port Harcourt Expressway, and so many others that we're doing there. That's going to have an impact in this next election. When we say that we're the party that delivers on what we promise, we have shown that. And then on top of that, before now, in 2019, there was not a single state, as you recall, that was governed by the All Progressives Congress. Today, there is Imo State led under the APC-led administration of Governor Hope Uzodinma, as well as Ebonyi State led by Governor Dave Umahi. And of course, you recognize that the other three states in the zone, you will have Anambra under ABGA, where we have certain support in that state, certainly will be competitive. And then, of course, in Enugu and Abia, where you have the opposition People's Democratic Party, at least in name, in terms of the support, given the level of disenchantment in those two states about the lack of equity and justice in operation in the People's Democratic Party right now. We believe will be very competitive in those states as well. And if you look across the country, in the North Central, where we have 5 out of 6 states, and even in the 6th state, we're very, very competitive. The Southwest, I don't know a single state in the Southwest that we are feeling concerned about. We're quite strong everywhere in the Southwest. In some of the very few states where the PDP holds sway, you'll know that there are similar issues around equity and justice that are playing out within those states in favor of the candidacy of His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. And of course, in the South-South, the most populous states are falling behind His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu because they believe that they are not in any way second-rate citizens. I can tell you, as somebody who is from Rivers State, from LMA local government area of Rivers State, that in Rivers State today, it is not because the state is against any particular presidential candidate that we are supporting en masse His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. It is because we recognize, we know what is good from what is bad. We know a good thing when we see it. We know a performer when we see it. We know what Lagos was before 1999, and we know what it is today. We like quality things in the Niger Delta, and this is why Rivers State, for example, will move massively across party for His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, in addition to several other states. So, and then of course in the North, it's no secret that we have overwhelming support, particularly in view of the overwhelming popularity, not only our candidate, His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, continues to enjoy, the stalwart support of the northern governors of the All Progressives Congress that supported His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu en masse in the primary and will deliver their states, but then of course the massive following that His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari will always command in the North. You combine all of these factors and you can see why we're very certain in view of including the weakness of the competition, you will know why we're certain of overwhelming victory come Saturday in the presidential election.
Yes, but many analysts say the Naira redesign issue has affected the chances of your party in the elections. How will you react to this?
I would react by drawing the attention of any observer who alludes to that notion to the kind of turnout we've been seeing in view of the real and difficult hardships that our people are really avoidably facing on account of the failed implementation of this policy. That has not stopped them from trooping out. One, His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu came out in Abeokuta to speak to Nigerians directly, which is what he is known for, speaking directly to Nigerians and interacting directly with Nigerians, hearing from them and answering them. He said it very clearly. No matter what any movement, any shadow group, any conspiratorial movement in the deep state or in the bureaucracy of the federal government is planning to in any way usurp his candidacy and his eventual victory, what we're sure of is that our people are going to march out. If you say there's no fuel in the car, we will walk. If you say there's no way that we will be able to enter bus, we will enter Okada, but we will get to that polling unit and we will vote. And His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu will be elected by the grace of God on Saturday as a result. So what we're saying is that this is not a matter of conjecture or rhetoric. We saw the same phenomenon in the turnout in these rallies across all states of the Federation. In some of the most far-flung, distant communities, you're seeing people finding their way into the rally grounds of the various campaigns across all states of the North, Southwest, North Central, Southeast, South, wherever we are. So this is why we're confident. So if they're going to do that for a rally, for just simple rally, how much more when it comes to the real matter, which is taking your PVC and going and lining up, casting your ballot, and then of course protecting your vote. It's one thing to cast your ballot, but we know that we know that we're going to win this election. We know that we have the best candidate. We know that we have the best market to sell. So it is in our interest, of course, to ensure that our voters are protecting their votes, because any vote that is not protected is a loss to the All Progressives Congress. It's not a loss to anybody else because they're not going to have the votes. We will have the votes. So we're asking our people, as you go out to vote the man who you know is going to radically transform Nigeria for the better, just as he had done in Lagos State, make sure that you cast your ballot, but that you also protect that vote in the spirit of ensuring that the right thing comes to pass in terms of your aspiration to have the best candidate possible to be elected president on Saturday.
All right, so let's get to talk about some of the policies your candidate has for Nigerians. Can you throw more light on the consumer credit agenda of your candidate?
This, for me, as an individual, I believe, and I've gone through every single letter of the campaign manifesto of His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu and the All Progressives Congress, in addition to the other manifestos of the other parties, to be very frank. And I can tell you that this, to me, is the most foundational, the most important, and the most consequential innovation that His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu is going to bring to Nigeria as president. I say so because it unlocks so many things. First and foremost, in this country, we have always been talking about, okay, we're going to develop the economy, we're going to provide infrastructure, we're going to provide social investment programs. These are things that the All Progressives Congress has been able to achieve under the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari in all parts of this country. But the next level is, how do we get to have Nigerians be assured that their direct standard of living will improve. And this is where we talk about the establishment of the consumer credit system under His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. For the last several decades, all those things that the elites in this country, the wealthy in this country, have been able to benefit from with exclusivity. We want all Nigerians, whether middle income, whether low income Nigerians, to all be able to access many of those same things. So when we talk about housing, for example, affordable housing, when we talk about being able to access finance for a vehicle, for example, an automobile, these are things that will be made available through the establishment of the consumer credit system. But I want to be very detailed and precise in what I'm talking about in terms of how this is going to work. Now, first of all, we recognize that through the instrumentality of the Central Bank of Nigeria under the leadership of His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, we will be providing enhanced interbank settlement offers, enhanced monetary policy ratios to the domestic money banks in the country to ensure that we can unlock trillions of naira in new affordable lending for onward lending and distribution to the bulk mass of our people. I'm talking of the low income and middle income Nigerians in their tens of millions, right? How we're going to also ensure that this cheap credit gets to them is we're going to ensure that whether you are a civil servant or whether you're employed, let's just say, let me make it very practical. You're a market woman, you own a market stall. After paying your girl and your boy, after selling your textiles for the month, let's say your take-home income is 90,000 or 100,000 naira a month on average. You will be able to come to the bank and say, look, I have this provable income over the last 5 or 6 months, and on the basis of this, I want to be able to access an affordable mortgage on a low interest rate to a social house. Well, that is housing that the total cost of the house will be 5 million naira or less, between 2.5 and 5 million naira, depending on how many bedrooms are involved. Now, what will now happen is the bank will say, okay, we have seen your bank records. We can see that you have steady inflows month after month of this amount of money. On the basis of this predictability and proven income, we can now afford to give you a mortgage, a low interest mortgage on that social house, right, for let's just say 10 years at a rate of 20,000 naira per month. Because if you're making 100,000, we're confident that you can affordably pay the bank 20,000 naira per month, for example. Now, what this does is it now immediately gives that woman who works day after day tirelessly in the market, who is dealing with landlords and rents for over the last several decades, all of a sudden she can go into her own social house, right, where she will be able to be paying.
Mr. Ngelale, at this point, we need to go. Mr. Ngelale, at this point, we need to go on another commercial break. But when we come back, we will take a look at some of his economic policies. Please stay with us. And I still have Ajuri Ngelale. He is the special assistant to the President on Public Affairs and Deputy Principal Spokesperson of the Tinubu-Shettima Presidential Campaign Council. All right, let's talk more. Tinubu has promised economic prosperity if elected president. What specific steps will he take in this regard?
And this question allows me to really round off on this issue of the consumer credit system, because it deals really with the heart of what you have just asked. When we talk about the standards of living for our people across the board at any income level. Just to round up on the housing point, it's one thing to ensure that our people have access to a house, which is very, very important. But it's another thing entirely to appreciate that this unlocks millions, without an exaggeration, millions of new construction jobs across all states of the Federation. Because when you now have a reliable offtake, before now, Nigerians were asked at any income level to engage in any kind of corrupt practice possible to try and get money that is outside of the means of their legitimate incomes in order to pay cash up front for a house, cash up front for a car, a year's rent up front in cash. These are things that, all income levels in developed economies, they don't have to go through these kinds of difficulties. And we believe that we can disincentivize corruption while ensuring that the standards of living for our people go up drastically with the availability of consumer credit. Now, the point I was just about to make was that you have now unlocked, because you have millions of Nigerians who will be able to access these homes without having to pay cash up front, but within the legitimate the means of their legitimate incomes. You will now unlock millions of new construction jobs for the unemployed youth across this country Who will be involved in vending for things like sand, all of the inputs that will be locally produced and locally provided, things like sand, things like door handles, things like glass production for the windows, things like the wood for the doors, things like cement, and all of that value trickles down into the informal economy across all segments of the population. So that's on the one side with housing. The way that the consumer credit system will also work is that it's also going to impact on what will be a nascent automobile manufacturing industry in Nigeria. Right now, we're just doing a joint assembly. What we want to do is have all the layers of value in country so that we can emphasize on processing and finishing our products instead of, exporting raw materials. We're exporting finished products to make the most foreign exchange possible in our transactions with the international community. This comes in line with that, because once you have been able to provide the civil servant and the self-employed Nigerian citizen who is hustling every day trying to make a living, once you have given them cheap credit to also now have a car note where with their 50,000 naira income, they can pay 15,000 naira a month toward a car note on a monthly basis until they own that car. But while they're paying for the car, they're using the car. What this now does is you've now unlocked millions of more jobs in the manufacturing of automobiles and automobile parts across this country. This is why I'm saying that when we look at consumer credit system, it's not just some great idea. It is something that on a much smaller scale, His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu had already put in place in Lagos State, where he put in place a program where civil servants in Lagos State were able to gain access into housing by making monthly contributions from their salary and their pensions to be able to access that housing. What he's just going to do is expand it beyond the realm of the public service into the private sector and ensure that those MSME owners, those hustlers, those Nigerian citizens working to make a better lives for them and their families, that all of them have equal opportunity to really receive that dignity that comes with home ownership that for way too long has been the exclusive preserve of the Nigerian elite. Now, you asked the question about standard of living as well. I think the other point to make here is that if you look at the industrialization program of His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, what you will also find there is really an unprecedented focus on the comparative advantages of the various regions, saying that, look, we know that in the Southwest, we have some of the world's most high-quality sand, that we can now say, look, instead of begging and exporting sand, for example, what we can be doing is we can actually turn that into high-quality, into a world-class glass production industry, not just for domestic consumption, but also for international export across our borders to serve the West African sub-region, to serve the continent, and then to serve the world with Nigerian glass produced from Nigerian sand, for example. Same thing with, in parts of the North Central, where we have massive clay deposits that can become a world-class pottery production and dish-making industry in the country, not just to satisfy local demand. We have since been importing dishes from China and from Thailand, sustaining jobs in Thailand and China, while our youths are unemployed here. What we're saying is that we will use our own clay to produce our own pottery, and we'll be, consuming it locally and also exporting it to the West African sub-region, to the continent, and to the rest of the world. The point here is that all the opportunities, everything we need is within this country. All we have needed is visionary leadership, which we have enjoyed under President Muhammadu Buhari. But what we need further than that is we need implementing agents, officials in the government, across the government, who have proven track records of performance, whether in the private sector or in the public sector, who will deliver effectively and efficiently on the vision of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We believe that in terms of industrialization, that under His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, the rubber is truly going to hit the road. And the last point on this is that we're going to provide lower import tariffs for any industry, for any MSME or any medium or large-scale industry that is importing importing inputs for semi-finished manufacturing and processing of available inputs or available raw materials in country, to incentivize again refining and processing as against merely exploration and eventual export of raw materials. And then the last point is we're going to put in place a set of tax incentives and credits and holidays for all small-scale, medium-scale, and large-scale industries in Nigeria who can present a proven minimum quota of their workforce being made up of Nigerian youths. We are determined to empower Nigerian youths to really take up the mantle of intergenerationalizing industrial productivity in our country, ensuring that it's our young people that are learning in these industries, that are being equipped in these industries, and that are working in these industries. That is going to be a major focal point moving forward. And we believe that with all of this in place, Nigeria is not going to be desperately searching for foreign exchange from just oil and gas alone. We're going to be getting oil, we're going to be earning foreign exchange en masse.
All right, Mr. Ngelale, we're running out of time. We're running out of time. But before we go, let me quickly ask you this. You know, to promise is one thing, to deliver is another thing. Why should Nigerians trust Tinubu to bring economic prosperity to them?
Simply put, it will be because of his track record. I mean, any man is only as good as his previous actions indicate. One can tell you that he's an honest man, but if he has a record of fraud, you will know that he's not an honest man. A man can tell you that, oh, I'm going to recover Nigeria, I'm going to make Nigeria better, and all of these things. But the question is, what are you recovering Nigeria from? Is it from those of you vultures that sold off a $3.2 billion aluminum smelting company in Akwa Ibom State for $130 million to your friends and watched it be cannibalized? Are you now the one that will come and recover the Nigeria that you collapsed yourselves? So these are the questions that are being asked. So when Nigerians assess the campaign pledges and the man who is His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, they are assessing his credentials. They're saying, look, we know what Lagos was in 1999, whether it is in terms of crime infestation, and what it is now in terms of security, in terms of being able to conduct your business in any part of Lagos without fear of being robbed at night and during the daytime. We know what it was in terms of infrastructural deficit before 1999 that had grown really between 1983 and 1999, and we saw how he turned that around, not just by leveraging on the efficient and prudent use of public resources for public infrastructure development, but also effectively leveraging on private sector resources to fund public infrastructure development. He was really the engineer of that. Then if you look at the management of the actual public service itself, he came into office in 1999 with 50% of the Lagos State civil service being made up of ghost workers, non-existent human beings, just a faucet pipe to fund the fat cats of the bureaucracy at that time. He came in, brought in the Oracle software, and ensured that they automated all of those processes, cut out all those ghost workers, created all...
sadly, we're out of time. Mr. Ngelale, sadly, we're out of time, but I must thank you very much for coming on Politics Tonight. Ajuri Ngelale is the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs and Deputy Principal Spokesperson of the Tinubu-Shettima Presidential Campaign Council. Thank you very much for coming as we take a look at the renewed hope agenda of the APC presidential candidate, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. Thank you once again.
Thank you for having me, and I wish everyone well on Saturday.